General James C. McConville is the Chief of Staff of the Army and a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He is the senior officer responsible for the organization, training, and equipment of 1 million men and women in uniform across the active component Army, Army National Guard, and Army Reserve. He also serves as an advisor to the President, Secretary of Defense, and the National Security Council.
Welcome, General McConville, to the 142nd General Conference. To all the members out there, 3,400 that are online right now, remember we're taking questions live, and at the end of remarks, we'll be able to do a Q&A with General McConville. General McConville, over to you.
Well, good afternoon, and thanks, Mick. It's great to be here. And even though we are challenged with COVID, civil unrest, wildfires, hurricanes, conflict in Afghanistan and Iraq, and great power competition, it's a great day to be in the United States Army because we serve with the greatest soldiers in the world, soldiers like you in the National Guard. So let me start off by saying thank you. Thank you to the entire National Guard across all the states and territories. I am so proud of everything you have done to support our hometown, our communities, and our nation. Your performance every year, and especially this year, has been phenomenal, and it's really made a difference. Right now, you have units deployed across the world. You have units responding to hurricanes, wildfires, COVID, civil unrest. It's just amazing what you're doing as I speak here this afternoon. And for COVID response, you moved quickly to where you were needed. You went into the alternate healthcare facilities and provided medical and logistics support at all critical locations throughout our communities in our states. You went to places like the Soldiers' Home in Holyoke, Massachusetts, which became critically short on staff and nurses while they were battling the spread of the virus. And you went in there with test kits, protective equipment to assist with the care of our retirees and our veterans, and you really made a difference. You went out throughout the entire country. You went to the toughest places at very difficult times. When you were needed, you were there, and you should be very proud of that because we certainly are. And if you don't remember anything else I said today, remember two things. People first and winning matters. And people first is a philosophy. And when I say people, I mean National Guard soldiers. I mean reserve soldiers. I mean our regular Army soldiers. I mean our families, our civilians, and our soldiers for life, our retirees and veterans. You know, and we must take care of our people and provide a positive command climate where everyone treats each other with dignity and respect, and that can be no more important than today. Because people are the Army's greatest strength. They're our most important weapons system. And that's why people will always be my and the Secretary's top priority. And when we talk about winning matters is an attitude. Because when we send the United States Army somewhere, when we send your unit somewhere, we're not sending you to participate. We're not sending you to try hard. We're sending you to win because there's no second place or honorable mention in combat or in the business that we are in. And we win by developing these cohesive teams that are highly trained, that are disciplined, and they're fit. And we win by doing the right things the right way, and we win through our people. You know, now is the time to transform the Army. The National Defense Strategy focuses us on great power competition. And great power competition does not have to mean great power conflict. And it won't if we remain strong. And it's really not about fighting the last fight better, something we've done extremely well over the last 20 years. It's about winning the next fight. In order to do that, we recognize that we must transform the Army now. And we can't get that transformational change we need with incremental improvements. We have a unique opportunity right now to set the Army on a course that will preserve the overmatch that we need in great power competition and to ensure we can compete and deter those who wish us harm. I would suggest that the last major transformational change in our Army took place as we came out of Vietnam in the late 70s and 80s. We changed the way we fought with the development of new doctrine called air-land battle. We developed new organizations like the Ranger Battalion, the 160th Special Operations Regiment, and some of our special missions units out of Desert One when we did not have the capability to rescue our hostages. We built our DIRT combat training centers at the National Training Center and Joint Readiness Training Center, where we're able to increase the overall readiness over the last 39 years in such a great way. We modernized our warfighting systems with the development of the Big Five, the Abrams tank, the Bradley, the Patriot, the Black Hawk, and the Patriot. And we transformed our people processes by instituting the all-volunteer force, and we developed the best NCO Corps in the world that is coveted by other militaries around the globe. And since then, we've made incremental changes to our systems. We've got alpha models, we've got new versions, but we're now reaching the limits of the technologies and designs that we developed in the 1970s. And the conditions we face, the threats we face, have changed. We recognize in the future we'll be contested in all 5 domains, certainly on the land as always, certainly in the air and on the sea, but also in space and in cyber. And I believe that only transformational change will build the Army that we need for the future. And we are implementing the multi-domain operations concept that's going to allow us to fight in the future where we know that we will be contested in every single domain. It includes a calibrated force posture, new organizations in this concept called convergence. And we are forming new organizations that are agile and provide options in the future. Units like the modular multi-domain task force that will provide long-range precision effects and long-range precision fires for our COCOM commanders. We're building security force assistance brigades, and both of these are already in high demand and provide unique capabilities to our combatant commanders. We now have 6 security force assistant brigades established to train, advise, and assist our military partners around the world. This includes the 54th Security Force Assistant Brigade with guardsmen across Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Georgia, and Texas. We're also developing cyber ranges in the synthetic training environment, and we remain very aggressive across our 6 modernization priorities. We have new equipment and capabilities under Army's Futures Command being developed in a way that the Army has never done before. And we're moving away from the linear processes from the industrial age. We are using collaborative processes. We're linking operations, we're linking operators, acquisitions, product designers, and scientists. And together they are generating requirements and continuously testing and experimenting to make sure that we get the best equipment for our soldiers that they deserve. And I like to call it, we're trying before we buy. These changes enable us to move at the speed of relevance. And we're transporting, I think most importantly, our industrial age personnel management system to a 21st century talent management system. And we've gotten a lot accomplished with the fielding of the Integrated Personnel and Pay System Army, as we like to call it, IPSA. And I really appreciate the National Guard taking the lead on this and making this happen in all of your states. And we're going to take the lessons that we've learned from this and apply it to the reserves and the regular Army. We've also implemented many new ways which we manage talent, and we can compete for talent. So we get the right talent into the right positions, and we retain that talent for the future. We've learned a lot in our first iteration of our Battalion Commanders Assessment Program, where we put battalion commanders through a 5-day assessment to make sure that they have the right knowledge, skills, and behavior to lead our soldiers, and we've learned a lot from that. We used to spend about 2.5 minutes at a battalion commander's board to determine who our future leaders would be. We found that was not an adequate amount of time. And so we started a new Colonel's Command Assessment Program, again, to make sure that we're putting the best leaders in charge of our soldiers. And I believe that if we get the right leaders in the most consequential positions, it'll only improve the overall capability of our Army. And there's a lot more to accomplish, like how we compete, develop, and maintain talent in our force as we transform. It's also important that we work closely with our allies and partners, which you all do so very well while we transform the Army. As you know, your state partnership program is absolutely key. As I travel around the world to meet chiefs of staff and chiefs of defense in many countries, they rave about your program and what you contribute to their capacity and capability and overall security. So you should be very, very proud of what you're doing. And just to recognize a few, Washington State and Thailand recently conducted virtual engagements due to COVID. In Texas, recently established a relationship with Egypt just a few days ago. And many of our units are deployed across the world, serving shoulder to shoulder with our allies and partners, like the Wisconsin Army National Guard's engineers in Afghanistan with Romanian soldiers in April, and the Oregon National Guard with units deployed to Kosovo. And many are serving with peacekeeping missions alongside our Polish armed forces, I know for a fact that the state of Illinois has a long, long relationship. And so I want to thank you for your hard work building and maintaining these important connections. They're critical to helping us build stronger relationships and our interoperability. And some of the other efforts that we're going after to really strengthen our relationship with our allies and partners is we're increasing the amount of international military education and training, IMAT, as we like to call it. I've met so many chiefs of Army and senior leaders that have been exposed to our military and our country through this program, and it is very, very important. And another is foreign military sales. I'm not in the business of foreign military sales, but I think it's important that our partners have access to the same equipment that we're using so we can train together and we can achieve a better level of interoperability. And it also helps us to reduce the costs and to maintain our organic industrial base. And finally, the employment of our security force assistance brigades and conducting combined exercises. These are so important in increasing the capacity and capabilities and building interoperability with our allies and partners. And all these efforts are happening now. And by combining these efforts with the development of multi-domain operations and modernizing and transforming is how we will compete in the future. And our transformation and continued initiatives with allies and partners will build the strength that we need to have overmatch and to deter and maintain advantage in great power competition. And before I close, I want to go back to people. I had the opportunity recently to visit the National Training Center. The National Training Center, this is the first brigade rotation that we've done since COVID, almost in 4 or 5 months. And while I was there, I saw the great 134 ABCT Red Bulls conducting the CTC. And with them were soldiers from over 20 states that sent the sport. And I was just incredibly proud of what they were doing, how they got there. And I ran into some amazing soldiers. And the morale in those soldiers was absolutely incredible. They've been through a lot this year. They've been through COVID. They've been through, some of the civil unrest. And, I met a store manager from multiple grocery stores in Minnesota. And recently, he had just lost one of his stores. But he was there training with his soldiers. He was one of the many guardsmen who went from protecting their hometown, trying to defeat COVID, and then repacking their equipment for the National Training Center rotation in California. And these are the incredible people you have in your formations. They're proving the purpose of the National Guard is to protect your fellow neighbors and communities while also defending the nation. The Army could absolutely not do what it does without the National Guard. And I would say this year, that is even more true. You are critical to the transformation of the Army, and we are proud to serve, fight, and win alongside of you. So on behalf of Secretary McCarthy and all the Army senior leaders, thank you and all your families for what you do every single day for your communities, for your states, and for this nation. You really make a difference. And please remember, it's about people first, winning matters, and we remain Army strong together.
Thank you, General McConville. We know how busy you are as the Chief of Staff of the greatest land domination force on the planet. And we have had some questions come in from the audience, and I'd like to kind of pose them to you here. We've got about 15 minutes of his time remaining to allow us to take questions in. So, sir, I'll start it right off here. National Guard soldiers served side by side with their active duty counterparts in missions around the globe, yet often with older and outdated equipment. How are you working to modernize the Guard and ensure units are deployable, interoperable, and sustainable with the active component?
Yeah, first of all, we need to make sure that our National Guard soldiers that are deploying have the best equipment to make sure that they go into whatever the mission is, whether it's combat or whether it's a peacekeeping type deployment or it's fighting hurricanes, that they have the equipment they need to do the job. So what we're doing is as we bring units to the highest level of readiness, we are making sure that they have that equipment that they need. And part of the transformation is modernization. And we are making trade-offs to make sure that we can get the equipment modernized, and we can get the equipment to the National Guard. As I've talked to senior leaders, as we bring future systems on place, and I'll talk about future vertical lift or aircraft, there'll be Guard units that are in the initial fielding of those new systems that come in. Some systems will be filled to the Guard units that are the highest priority for the type of deployments. Some will be fielded to the soldiers who perform certain roles, whether it's vertically by combat soldiers when we look at certain types of equipment, and others will be by the focus on what they plan to do. And we are working very closely with the General Jensen to make sure that we can make that happen.
Sir, one of the questions that's come up recently is, as you know, we've had a tremendous amount of mobilization in the last 6 months. At one point, nearly 90,000 Guardsmen. And one of the things that we're seeing in the states and territories is a degradation of those primary MTO readiness tasks as a result of the impacts of COVID. I know it affects both the Army and the National Guard, but what's your plan and perspective for next year on how we address any issues to readiness in terms of soldiers' training and skills?
Yeah, I want to talk about 134, Armored Brigade Combat Team, or ABCT as we like to call it, the Red Bulls, and the 20 other states that went to the National Training Center. I think what they did is, first of all, as you said, they don't quite have the time to train in all their key tasks, but what they did very, very well was they made sure their soldiers, their squads, and their platoons were highly trained when they came to the National Training Center. And as a result, they were able to start with a very strong foundation and quickly progressed as they went through the missions that ran up to battalion and then brigade level. And one of the things we're looking hard at is, and we're actually changing the strategy within the Army, recognizing that we need to spend the time making sure that new soldiers, squads, platoons, and companies get the majority of time to train, get the majority of time to get ready, so when they get into higher level collective training, they're ready to go and they don't have to go back. And I thought 134 did a great example of that. They impressed everyone out at the National Training Center along with the other 20 states that contribute. And I think that's a good model for the future. And the Force Comm commander has seen that, and he's actually inculcating that into the strategy for the entire Army.
Thank you, Chief. One of the terms we see in the new National Defense Strategy is this concept of irreversible momentum. Can you discuss how the Army National Guard will mold into the U.S. Army's plan to sustain that line of effort?
Yeah, I think the Army National Guard is actually critical in the National Defense Strategy. And when we talk about the National Defense Strategy, one of the key factors or one of the key discussions that they talk about is great power competition. And so how do we compete? Well, the Guard has an incredible role to play that. You know, one of the ways we can compete is by working with allies and partners in the region where our competitors are. And what we want to do is we want to work with them so we can increase their capacity and we can increase their capabilities. And I talked a little about the state partnership, but I'm also talking about the Security Force Assistant Brigades. I'm talking about some of the exercises that we run in serving side by side with our allies and partners. And then also we got to make sure that the Army National Guard has the equipment for the large-scale combat operations that we will conduct, and they have the training available to do that so that we can deter those who wish us harm, and that's an important part of their role also.
Thanks, sir. On that idea of modularity and the modular task force that you mentioned, where do you see the National Guard, and how would you describe our role as enablers and warfighters in long-range precision fires and air and missile defense as we go forward?
Yeah, one of the discussions that we had, we just had a very large meeting with all the commanders, and General Jensen was there, and one of the things we're taking a look at is, you know, part of about transforming the Army is really how we, you know, one of the things is new equipment, but there's much more to that than just new equipment. It's also new organizations, it's new doctrine, it's new ways we're going to train, and, you know, as we work with the National Guard, and we work with the states, and we bring on these new equipments, you know, we're going to have that discussion. What fits in your state? What fits in your role? What type of organizations is the best place to bring these new capabilities into place? Because we're going to need precision fires, and we're going to need air and missile defense capabilities in the National Guard along with the regular Army.
Yes, sir, and I know you mentioned in your remarks there IPSA, an acronym all of us that are either Adjutant General or in the Army Guard are very familiar with. And as the Army transforms into this information age, I know previous chiefs have mentioned the intercomponent movement between active Guard and Reserve and creating a system where we can better manage talent across the entire Army. You talked about people. What's your feeling about talent management and Compo 1, 2, and 3 inter-service movement?
Yeah, I think, you know, first of all, I want to thank the National Guard for leading the way on the integrated personnel and pay system. And, you know, I never knew until I became the G1 of the Army that we had 3 personnel systems in the Army, one for the National Guard, one for the Reserves, and one for the regular Army. And, you know, it almost, you know, to me, that's not the way we want to be. We're a total force. We all need to be on the same personnel system, and then even then it needs to be a talent management system. And so what do I mean that by talent management? I would argue or suggest that we presently manage soldiers in all 3 components by your grade and your MOS. You know, you're a sergeant of engineers, or you're a captain of infantry, and I think especially in the Guard and Reserve, where so many of our soldiers and officers have unique talents that we can't see. The new talent management system, the integrated personnel pay system, is going to allow us to see what they do in real life. And I use an example from my time in Afghanistan when I was a 1-star. We were rebuilding, or at the time we were actually surging in Afghanistan. And I had a great sergeant reservist who MOS was logistics, and I think he was a staff sergeant or sergeant first class, but in his civilian life, he ran an engineering design firm. That sergeant is the one that designed all of our bases when we did the surge. We had another reservist who ran the Texas Highway Department. Again, I think his job was he was a major of engineers, and knowing what people's true capabilities are, what their knowledge, skills, and behaviors are, getting them into the right place at the right time is key. And the other thing I can envision, once we have a system that we can move people back and forth, I think this will be incredibly important. One of the complaints I often get or concerns from our National Guard and Reserve soldiers when they come on active duty, there's pay problems, there's personnel problems, because they're moving from system to system. And once we're all in the same system, we have the integrated personnel and pay system, I think we'll be able to manage their talents. We'll get away from the issues we have when you go from component to component. And I can envision where soldiers routinely move from one component to the other for a period of time. They come back in, they go out. And at times when we need certain skill sets. With COVID hitting, we put out a call to reserves for people that were in the inactive reserve or people that wanted to come back in and help us fight the COVID virus that had medical capability. That was all done pretty much in the industrial age manner, not necessarily the information age manner. We do it very, very quickly, and so in the future, we'd like to have that capability. We could talk to people very quickly to make that happen.
Chief, last question here. You're the first of 4 members of the Joint Chiefs that are going to be with us over the next 2 days. We appreciate your time. One of our speakers tomorrow, I think our first one tomorrow, is General Hokanson, recently appointed chief. And he has released, and we've seen Secretary McCarthy's signature of a plan about the 8 Guard Division alignment for training and readiness. Can you offer your thoughts on that plan and how you plan to implement and round out or robust those divisions so they can be ready to be first up in the combat reserve?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think you've got a great chief of the National Guard Bureau, General Dan Hokanson. I've known him since he was a lieutenant. He was in my 1st Cavalry unit, and so I don't think the Department of Defense could have a better leader at this time. And General Hokanson and I have talked about, when he was the director of the National Guard, the idea of divisional realignment. A lot of advantage to this. It gives opportunities for the talent management of our Guard soldiers and officers. They can move up and move within the division structure. It also sets us up for great power competition by bringing together 8 divisions. We've had 8 divisions, but by bringing them together, allowing them to train together, I think it's just going to overall increase the capabilities of the Army, and we're solidly in support.
You know, Chief, I really appreciate your perspective on that. We really look forward to teaming with General Hokanson's staff, the DA staff, all of the folks in AQ and the Secretary of the Army's office to continue to build an interoperable and modernized force. As you know, here at NGAUS, we are both an advocacy and education organization, and we look forward to a strong partnership. I tell our partners all the time that, we're no greater or lesser than any other soldiers, completely interoperable, and we appreciate the One Army concept. The last quick question we have here is about fielding, both with future vertical lift and other future vertical or ground combat systems. Can you just give us a quick update on where they are in the acquisition cycle?
Yeah, so on the future vertical lift, as some of you may know, what we're doing is we're fielding 2 new types of aircraft. And I say aircraft because these are not going to be helicopters. They are going to have, we don't know exactly the mode they're going to be. We're down to 2 prototypes, if you can, for the future attack reconnaissance aircraft and for the future long-range assault aircraft. So we're going to have a new attack and reconnaissance aircraft, and we're going to have a new long-range assault aircraft. And right now they're going through the process of developing those. We're seeing some great progress by many of the teams, and we're actually flying them right now and testing those type aircraft, so we're getting an idea of what they can do. What we envision in the future is they will be fielded based on need, but as I've told the National Guard, my intent is to have the National Guard fielded right up there in the front unit, along with the 160th, the 101st Airborne Division, and the 82nd Airborne Division. And then as we take a look at the rest, there will be a unit that gets fielded with that new capability, and then we will go ahead and work through the priorities on the rest. Same thing right now, what we're looking at on the optionally manned fighting vehicle, we're taking a different approach to that. That will replace the Bradley. The approach we're taking now is we're going out to industry, and we're providing characteristics of what we think we want in this vehicle. And we're doing that rather than going to firm, hard requirements, because we want to allow industry to innovate, to come up with interesting ideas. In the process we're using is we're going out to industry with some characteristics. They're coming back to us with a white paper or what they could do. We're down selecting on those white papers in designs, and then we're down selecting, giving them an opportunity to come back with a full operational design, and then making our way to prototype before we actually go to requirements. So we know that when we get to prototyping and we've seen what they can do, we can actually get that out. So that'll replace the Bradley, and then we'll begin moving those vehicles in around the 2028 timeframe.
Thank you, General McConville, for taking the time to be here with us today. As the chairman of NGAUS, I know what a great partner and battle buddy you've been, and you have just embraced our National Guard Army soldiers, and they're just doing great things out there every day. We appreciate you taking the time to be here. We know you have a tough task ahead with transformation, modernization, and the shifts into great power competition. But we in the Guard are eager to continue to serve as your primary combat reserve for the United States Army. And with all events, you know that we have exchanged coins, and in this physically distanced environment, we've created a challenge coin unlike any other. It's in the shape of a laptop to memorialize our first virtual conference. Each one of our speakers today will be given one of these. We've handed it off to your staff so that we can maintain some distance here on the stage, and I want to thank you again for taking such time out of your schedule. Our soldiers and airmen truly appreciate your participation and your willingness to come speak to us.
And Mick, just thanks again, and to all the National Guard soldiers and airmen out there. We're just real proud of what you're doing, and you should be too. And pass on to your families how much we appreciate what they do to allow you to serve. You're all making a huge difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief.